idea of the space between. You say something, and then I say something, and then you say something, and what I say to you is not something I knew I was going to say or that I'd prepared before. It's in response to what I think you are saying and what I think you might want. You know, so I'm responding to what you said, and it may or may not support what you said. It may support it and also suggest something else. And so I've called that, other people have called it like a fleeting moment. Something might happen when I might be saying, yeah, that's good, yeah, that's great, and then I might say something else, and you might think, oh, that wasn't quite what I was thinking. And you might shift your mindset just a little bit. And so that's just a little influence, a little reframe or a little something. And would you say that's something that can happen in a conversation?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, can it happen in a learning log? Because what I've been puzzling about, and I mean there are some examples in your logs where you write your log reflectively, and although you're just writing it, you're thinking at least of yourself and possibly of me as you write this. So it's sort of written in a dialogic sense. And when I read it, I'm reading it as though I was with you, and I can interject in your conversation at any stage. And so sometimes when I write my comments, I'm thinking, I'm just interjecting into what Jim has just said, and I'm saying, is that really so? Or you know, so it's like,
well, I've done a course before, my chartered secretary, which was 6 years distance learning.
right.
Yeah,
That's stunning for you.
with 16 papers with 3-hour examinations at the end of each.
Yeah. So you've done that.
I did that.
Yes.
And that was, and I went through a company, one of the big learning companies, Pearson's or something.
Pearson's, yeah.
I don't know if it was Pearson's.
Yeah.
PPP was it? It used to be. Anyway.
No.
And we would submit work as we went along.
Yeah.
As I went along, I did it all the time on my own, but and it would get marks back, but you didn't know who was marking it. So that is the unpersonal coaching element.
Okay. So you get some kind of feedback, yeah.
So you're getting feedback on what you've written.
As content.
So in that sense, the difference is the knowledge of the person. So when you say, are you thinking about the person when you're doing a log, I would say definitely.
Yeah. So this idea I've got that...
So that I knew you before we started.
Yes.
Not very well, but...
You had some sense of who I was.
Yeah.
And the sort of tone I might
Yep.
adopt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
But I think actually what I'm also doing is carrying a picture of your face in my head, of expression, and and I can imagine you saying those things.
Yeah. Yeah. So when he says this,
yeah,
it's a joke or it's a...
So I would say maybe virtuality isn't as good, but all the things we do to make it as close a substitute as possible to real dialogue.
Yeah. So we could...
When you described, is that what happens in a conversation? What I was thinking was, well, you're talking about dialogue.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this isn't like a typical dialogue, but I'm imagining if there's enough attention, it could be experienced like that.
Yeah.
Not sort of like once...
Well, and the fleeting moments, I mean, that's a sort of,
Yeah. Well, I noticed that probably our best times together were when we were on the phone.
Yeah, definitely.
Because, we could have these...
So what I did in the logs was, what I find frustrating was that the one response was for me was just the beginning, and then that was it.
Yeah.
Because you then move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can remember one time I found it quite frustrating because I thought I'll go back to you, and you just didn't go there with me. You just didn't come back. It was just like your response. Because normally I was kind of very...
Yes, there's a lot there.
There's a lot there which was really good. And on this one occasion when I went back, you
Thanks.
just gave me like a 3-liner, and I'm like, oh.
So lack of sensitivity.
No, well, it wasn't that. I was just like, it was. I just thought, well, you don't want dialogue. You don't want to really get into dialogue about it. I actually put it down as almost like a contractual issue in my head. That you didn't, you've done your piece.
I've done my bit.
You do a really good piece.
Yeah,
but actually, if you start getting into this, it could run away with you.
Yeah. That's useful feedback because I think it applies to both sides, because I know some of the students say, well, yeah, there were a lot of interesting ideas, but it was the next week, and I was working on new materials, and so it was frustrating because I couldn't use any of it. Yeah. So
moved on.
Yeah. So
well, that would be probably because my working outside of the logs was, well, I said to you, you asked me what I did. I always read all the online materials, but I didn't always read all the references.
No, you did the basic stuff, yeah.
And then I picked out, I always printed every single piece of material off for every phase, everything, and I had a quick look at it. I did everything online, and then I picked 2 or 3 key pieces out, and that was it.
That's
and that
fine.
didn't take that long.
No, that's fine.
So the logs was probably the piece where I really engaged.
Yes, well, and that was quite variable, wasn't it?
And that, I guess, yes, that was variable, because sometimes I didn't do the logs.
But when you did them, you tended to put a lot into them.
Yeah.
And so it was.
Because that's fair,
Yeah.
So I'm rewriting my own narrative now, aren't I?
It's all right. It's all right. That's what life's like, isn't it? So this is a fleeting moment.
Yeah.
You've started rewriting as a result of what we've just been talking about.
Questionnaires at the beginning of the process.
So I've thought, and I've tested this on a couple of people, that although you don't follow up a lot of these questions or challenges, you don't have time to, and you don't respond to me necessarily about them, whether they're useful or not, my sense is that because it just keeps happening, something is created. And it's not about responding to every specific thought, but this is happening all the time. So this person is focusing on me and my development in lots of different ways, and I'm hoping it creates some sort of sense, which is what I read your conditional and unconditional regard to be about, that there's something here, and if I stopped all that interest, that thing would become something else. It wouldn't be such an enhanced learning climate, if you like. So that's one interpretation I've got, and I think your feedback has suggested there may be some validity in that. That even though you can't respond to all these different things, and there's not enough time and we don't have conversations, nevertheless there is some residue, there's some legacy which this regular behaviour of mine stimulates.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think that is the crux of it. I think that, yeah. I mean, what else can I say? I agree.
You agree? Yeah. So it's not just a fantasy, and it's
no. I genuinely don't think that's a fan. That's fun. I think there's a very large grain of truth in that, and but actually, I think it would be an important balance, because it would be really wrong to convert it into a conversational thing. I think actually it ought to be weighted towards the text.
There is a value.
I think it ought to be weighted towards that.
Yeah.
Because once you get into conversation, into real, because one of the things about the logs is they're considered.
Yeah, they're personal reflections, aren't they?
They are reflective considerations, aren't they? So there's long pauses before each word is written.
And you're trying to formulate something, aren't you? So you're getting the thought out of your head.
Yes. So it might be worth trying to. So that's why it needs to remain the emphasis.
But you're suggesting, and I agree with you, that we should be moving about in this. Yeah, you can have 100% just conversation, nothing.
It's about human relationships. They are empowering.
Yes. And the writing can support and
somebody who you're working with, like me working with you. You're 20 years older than me for start.
You've discovered.
I now know. 19.
Is it? It's only
19. But within that, I was aware that you're into the field that I'm interested in, and you know a lot more about it than I do.
Possibly.
You do. So, and You know, and that is so you want as a learner, you want a whole bunch of that. You want as much of that as you can get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I suppose the little bit
personal contact makes you certainly feel as though you're getting it, whereas you sometimes feel that you're not getting it from the written. Mm-hmm. Although the written was you know, I always found it incredibly helpful. Mm-hmm. But it served to underline to me, you know, that there's somebody, you know, this person really knows a hell of a lot about this, you know. Yeah. So that, in that sense,
it's quite it's quite interesting, because in a way I've undervalued that side. I know I have, because the student I've got now. Do
you know why?
Well, it's something I should think about, because I've focused more on process type, context type responses rather than content type.
Well,
responses.
I think you have quite a personal leaning towards academic.
Right. I mean, I'm certainly interested in the ideas in the field, and trying to find ways of applying them.
But then I found that incredibly helpful, because working with you, and I don't know, I can't compare it with working with anybody else, I don't know, but working with you, I certainly feel as though I smartened up a lot academically. Yeah. I mean, a lot. Yeah. You know, from being absolutely nowhere really to being able to put together an academic piece of work, which I couldn't do before.
Well, what I thought at the end, when you did those drafts, although I was very critical of the lack of linking, I mean, I was really impressed by the quality of your work. Right. You know, you wrote about a whole lot of different things in a very perceptive and insightful way, and you just didn't connect at all. And but this was, you know, to me this was definitely PhD standard, that you're thinking there. Right. So if you felt that, you know, you didn't really know very much at the beginning, you had moved an awful lot.
Yeah, in terms of capability of knowing what to do.
Yes.
But that was a learning process of actually being required to do it. And a lot of that was through the very, very detailed marking of the assignments, which was probably one of the most helpful things, really.
Yeah, so...
You know, in terms of... and I had to go through a process of sort of quite tortuous process of getting very annoyed.
Yes. Why is he asking all these bloody
questions so deeply?
every sentence there's a question. What do you mean? How can you say that?
But then I also think I also think that becomes a level of technique and